Thanks, Kareen. What's next? It's the question that arises at the heart of every business planning session that has been held in the last 2 years. Really, it's the question that's been at the heart of every planning session for the last 200 years. But defining an answer has been particularly difficult in the last 2 years as public health orders, business closure mandates, various levels of restrictions across Canada made the look into the crystal ball a little more blurry. As we move out of the emergency phase, CDN has brought together channel players who have been in the trenches for the past 24 months to assess the changes and help sort out what was a temporary change and what changes may be permanent. Please join me in welcoming from F2 Factor, Mark Collins, and from Shiny Docs, Heidi Halver. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
Awesome. So let's start off with a few questions. The pandemic has precipitated an unprecedented tech revolution for big and small businesses alike. Rapid transformation around social and work interactions overnight, e-commerce, virtual conferencing, gaming, streaming, all underwent unprecedented growth. What do you think are the upsides and downsides of this rapid digitalization? I'll start with you, Mark.
First of all, I think it taught us that we could have been going a lot faster all along, because it was pretty amazing how we saw our partners, manufacturers, and our customers rally and respond and really accelerate digitization internally in terms of how workforces changed the way they work and enabling the whole remote work opportunity, and customers changing their business model so that they could actually serve their customers and continue to serve their customers, knowing that the way they actually interacted with their customers, delivered goods, supported their customers had to change overnight. So I think it taught us, number one, we could go a whole lot faster. It didn't need to be as slow as it was. But number two, I think it taught us that digitization is not just an opportunity to, go and make more money or be competitive. Digitization actually is resiliency. And I think it taught us that in spades, because those who effectively digitized their businesses and did it as aggressively as possible, I think felt the effects of the pandemic the least. So I would say that those were things that really struck me, Bill.
I don't know, Heidi, what have you seen?
So I would say the same thing. Resiliency is the first word that popped into my head when you started with the question. Mm-hmm. I think looking even at the tools and how we are maximizing the tools that we had previously when we were pre-pandemic, and then, once we started going into the pandemic, I think we had to, as you've both said, overnight change management, resiliency, and I think it surprised all of us how quickly we could move. And, for a lot of the folks that I spoke to previous to the pandemic and, having those conversations of what the world of work could look like for them, even before a pandemic, a lot of them felt that they could not navigate, working remotely and having their folks work from home. And I think it surprised a lot of people at how quickly they could get their team up and running. And I think, again, it was not something that we all had a choice. We didn't have a choice in the matter. And I think in some ways that actually helped.
I can tell you also, I was really surprised how quickly everyone just accepted this as normal. Right? We just went from, in-person meetings. And I know myself, I'm a certain age, right? Made a career out of going to events, shaking hands, exchange a card, follow up, follow through, establish rapport over time. And to, completely online cameras, home office. It was quick, and it was accepted almost instantly. I thought, at least. I don't know. What were your thoughts on that?
I had a big of an epiphany moment 3 weeks in when, at the time, my 3 and 5-year-old, just didn't appreciate boundaries, and I was home, and they were excited about it, and they didn't really care as much as I did about who I was speaking with, and I initially would apologize for that. And then I stopped one day and went, I need to lead by example, and I need to give my team the confidence that they need, that they don't need to apologize either for someone showing up at the door, or for the kids who need something during the day, or for the animal that happens to walk by on the keyboard. So we just sort of started talking about acknowledge what's happening in your life at the start of the meeting. Be okay to say that you might need to go off and on camera. You may need to mute yourself. You may need to leave a bit early. And I think that that built confidence for folks over time.
Totally agree. Mark, what do you have to say? Anything else you'd like to add?
yes, I agree. Accepting people are human beings, not just machines that go to a place of work, but they have dogs and cats and parents and grandparents and kids and all of that stuff. Absolutely. But I think it also gave leadership an opportunity to really think about the way they're leading and understanding that you measure things by them getting done, not watching them get done. And so empowering people to get their jobs done in a way that they find most effective, I think it really set the ground for a level of productivity that we've seen some uptick in that was a pleasant surprise.
I'd love to add to that because I think that freedom and that flexibility to benefit from flex hours, to do the work when you're at your best, is not something we necessarily had access to when we had to go to the office from 9 to 5. But when you're working remotely from home, you get to do the work when you feel at your best, and that might be leaving a bit early to care for your loved ones or take your pet for a walk, but you can log back on again, and maybe you're a night owl, and maybe that's when you're most creative. And I think that I've definitely seen a lot of folks, including myself, be much more productive because you can have that, what we call in our home work life, harmony.
Sure. I know for me personally that, Mark was onto something that was triggering in my mind. I would say that I'm most comfortable going to the office. I like that. I like to be there. I like the sort of tribalness of it. I like the osmosis you get out of the water cooler chats, like all that stuff, the social aspects of it. But I 100% agree from a productivity perspective. There's no doubt in my mind that I'm more productive when I'm in my home environment because I'm not interrupted. There's no sort of drive-by, random sort of how's it going meetings.
But that's one of the ways that we have had to, as people leaders, be creative and innovative and create opportunities, for those walk paths. I do a video every day for our team.
Right.
And I always say to them, this is my walk through the office in the morning saying, how was your weekend? What's going on with Joe? How'd that birthday party go? And so, it's my way to find that connection with my team, the whole company, and I do it for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I think that when I say I've done my best work, partly it's because I've been challenged. How do I keep my folks motivated? How do I get them collaborating and communicating when some folks aren't comfortable on camera? And we've completely changed the way we used to do business. We need to continue to innovate, especially as the world of work is changing. We need to make sure we don't get comfortable with the status quo. And we need to find ways to make sure we're meeting the needs of everyone. And again, we want our folks to do the work that they love. And that whole saying of if you can find work that you love, you don't feel like you're working any day in your life. It's hard for some folks to have that disconnect when they're working from home, when they're living in, and the pandemic added layers of constraint because at some points we couldn't even leave our homes. So there was added complexity to making sure our folks had what they need.
I think what you just touched on, I think that leads us to another topic that's extremely important that ties to that. And that is, like you just described, that world of choice that we've entered now. I completely agree. And everyone needs to be able to work together effectively no matter where they are. So if a portion of the workforce is going into the office, we can't create a class society where they have effectively, the front row seats at the concert. And then the people that are connecting remotely, are living in the cheap seats because they're not able to interact as effectively. So ensuring that companies are doing two things. Number one is deploying technology that actually serves that state-of-the-art benchmark of a high-quality digital experience for those that are connecting. But also it's the reinvention of the workspace itself. Things like immersive video rooms. So when a group think is happening, everybody, no matter where they are, is on equal footing to contribute to the discussion, number one. And number two, I think there's a massive opportunity for, manufacturers and partners themselves. There's an expression I've used for years and years, and that is our customers need to feel that when they come and visit us, wherever that may be, they're taking a trip into the future. We owe it to them to build the environments in which we work to reflect something aspirational to them. And our workforces are choosing the way they prefer to work. So it might redefine the amount of space that we need and how that space is used to ultimately transform it to create more compelling work environments, to create more compelling collaboration spaces where people can experience that, that sense of digital equality. So no matter where you are in the front seats with everybody else, and all having maximum impact, driving effective interactions, and making a difference to the business.
Mm. I think you're onto something that I'd like to talk a little bit more about as well, and that's a whole sense of belonging and collaboration and how it is changing. And how do you maintain that company culture when you're remote? I like that point you made about disparity. Don't just because they're remote doesn't mean they shouldn't be important. They don't have a front row seat to the show, but there is something arguably inherent in all of us that we like to come together, and it's how do we maintain that company culture when you're not in the same room?
I think we need to be innovative and iterative and keep things changing. I think the one thing that I've noted over the last 2 years is what worked in the first 6 months didn't work the next 6 months, and people were looking for something unique and something to look forward to, something exciting, something that could get them, engaged in a different way. I'm a big believer in bringing the team together so they can be part of the solution. I'm an ideas person. I can sit with my team. We could brainstorm an incredible amount of ideas. Is it going to meet the needs of our team? We're not going to know unless we go to the team and say, here's what we're thinking. What are you thinking? Can you contribute? Can you add to, this program, this idea? And I think as leaders, we need to continue to do that. And I think that that's a way of keeping people engaged, motivated, and wanting and willing to be part of that solution.
You know what? You struck a chord there that really got me thinking, Heidi, about, and I know that this would be something that would be on your mind, being a people leader like you are, just around the amount of turmoil around talent in the marketplace, and we're hearing this expression around, the Great Resignation, and something that I've seen a lot of over the past probably year. I like the way you framed that in terms of there being phases, and before the pandemic. There's no doubt that there was a rising tide of talk around the industry around employees' expectations in caring for their mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're actually seeing two forces come together at the same time, which I think is going to put immense pressure on this Great Resignation. Is I don't think employees any longer will see it as a privilege or an upside to work for an employer
Right.
that cares for their mental health to the point of work-life blending or balance or harmony as described it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a bare minimum. I think that's table stakes. And I think if they don't sense that, I think they're already going to be looking, and they're looking in times when that would have been the upside to having a great place to work. On top of that, now there's massive inflation on incomes because of the inflation going on in the marketplace right now. So companies' ability to attract and hold on to talent in these times, having very thoughtful strategies around creating engaging work environments, but also rewarding work environments in a multitude in different ways. It's critical, because if you can't find ways to hold on to your people, they know they have options, and the degree to which they'll exercise those options seems to be rapidly accelerating.
Mental health was a pandemic before the pandemic.
Right.
I think I celebrate that we've got very comfortable in the last 2 years. We're talking about mental health in this conversation. Would we have 3 years ago as comfortably? Would you be willing to share, your journey with mental health over the last 2 years? There's not one person that can say that they, didn't miss a beat over the last 2 years or didn't have a heightened sense of anxiety or wondering what the future looked like. We all did. And I think it presented an opportunity for us as businesses to bring that out in the forefront. People have choice now, and they're going to look to those organizations where they can bring their most authentic selves to work and do their best work. And I think, again, as a people leader, I get excited about that because our folks deserve the very best.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I know, we're a big outfit in Canada, and with the resignation, it snuck up on us, and then it was just here. And honestly, people are moving around like crazy. I'd love to hear from either of you if working remote has contributed to that.
Our goal is to create an environment where everyone is getting what they need. And I'm not that HR leader, too, that thinks that turnover is necessarily a bad thing. I think that's inevitable in business. You want to create opportunities where people feel like they can actually come to you first and have that conversation. Like, hey, Heidi, listen, I've been approached. I want to talk to you about the opportunity. And then we can have that conversation. And thankfully in my career, I've had that ability to create that environment where people will come to me sometimes first. We can explore that to help that person make the right decision.
I think companies are opening up their minds to, we've maybe for a long time focused on talent, like you said, Bill, earlier, where we knew we could drive to visit them and shake their hand.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we now live in a world where, if we can access their talents and apply their talents to our business, it's probably less worrisome where they are. And I think I'm a living example of that. I mean, I started my company the better part of a year and a half ago now, or so, right? And I've worked with some clientele and done some consulting and advising. And I almost never meet them live in person, and they're okay with it, and I'm okay with it. So I don't know whether I'm an employer or an employee in that circumstance. I guess it depends on the situation.
Sure.
But they all point to the fact that digitization has erased a lot of time and space in ways where it's an opportunity for both sides. And I think it forces both sides to continue to push the bar of excellence up higher and higher to make us all more competitive and better at what we do. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's good for Canada. A more competitive Canada is a higher standard of living for all of us.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing. There's no issue with that. We just need to keep at it because it never stops.
I remember a previous leader would talk to me about looking for the best available athlete, not worrying about so much where they're located. It's about the best person for the role. If they're in, pick a place, Regina, Saskatchewan, so be it, right? If they're the best person for the work, using technology, maybe you can broaden your horizons and maybe even looking beyond Canada, right?
Mm-hmm. And before we would consider, really relocating someone from Regina to Toronto. Does that person really want to relocate their family, their friends, and not be close to their loved ones in their community? Most of the time, no. And then there's that added level of complexity of integrating them into their new community, and to be able to offer them the opportunity to do a job that they love for a great organization and continue to work exactly where they are. That's an opportunity for them and an opportunity for a business to get access to, as you said, those best athletes, right? The best person for the role. When you remove the roadblock that a lot of organizations created for themselves pre-pandemic, is you have to come into the office. Once you remove that, your ability to tap into different talent pools and diversify your workforce, it opens up immensely.
That's a nice segue. One of the things always in previously was travel, right? Business travel specifically, and it's been limited for the past couple of years. And recruiting always would talk about how much travel was involved in a role as an element of that, and just the impact of travel in general. And do you foresee challenges in return to business travel?
Some people are going to be really keen to get back at it. Others are going to immediately remove themselves from the hiring process and won't even apply. Right. And so I think that flexibility and maybe a staggered approach would probably be what I would recommend to companies if they're looking to sort of get their folks back in the field. I work remote from home full time, and I have every intention to continuing to do that. And I'm an extrovert, but I'm on the phone with people all day, every day. I've got little people at the house. I get this is my purpose, but I have other things that are, giving me what I need. And I think that, I don't want to give that up just because we're hopefully getting out of a pandemic.
We're almost up against the time for today. Maybe just hear from each of you, a positive that came out of this pandemic and the work environment we found ourselves in for the past couple of years. It wasn't all bad, right? Maybe I'll start with you, Mark.
Is we all learned that you don't need to wait to innovate, period, right? Innovation used to be the aspirational thing on the horizon that companies and communities looked at. Partners tried to come up with new and interesting ways, and we all talked about it, but I don't know that we really did enough about it. And now we all know that, number one, we never had an excuse to wait. And number two, we can't. So I think that means that there's a brighter future in front of us. Bill, as you get all that technology out there to all of our customers that are waiting for it, right? There's going to be a huge shock wave of upgrades going on in the next 2 years. And that's laying the foundation for an innovation wave that we're now culturally ready to take on as a society and as an industry that's going to build a new Canada that's going to be incredible.
Companies got the nudge and the push that they needed to do what employees have been asking for a long time. The opportunity to try working from home and that flexibility and that freedom. And I think a lot of companies surprised themselves. And I'm positive, it's inspiring to see a lot of companies continuing to provide their employees those opportunities. And I hope more and more companies hear their employees out and provide them what they're looking for.
And I would say on a more personal level, reconnecting just on a personal level, in my home life, spending more time at home. And then actually when I am in the office, I find myself really appreciating more that human interaction with my staff and teammates. I think it's just great to see them. And especially when we were locked up for a while, that last go around. At this time, I just want to say thank you so much. I really enjoyed the panel talk with both of you today. It was really great. Appreciate the conversation. And now we'll hand it back to Corinne. Thanks, everybody.